Yeah, just wanted to give it a brief background on local nature recovery strategies, more from the regs and guidance side of things, and then leading into kind of our timeline and yeah, what our plan is for the next few months. Are you able to? Thanks, Charlotte. So yes, so this is just the rough agenda for the day. So I'll be doing the introductions, going over our draft governance structure and predicted timeline, and then from there, Charlotte will be taking on from that point. So local nature recovery strategies are a new system of spatial planning tools, which will be used to help nature recovery across England. There's 48 different areas at kind of county level, but some covering a couple of different county areas. But yeah, so 48 areas across the UK. These are all will all contribute to helping create the Nature Recovery Network, which came out of the Environment Act. And it's a plan to bring together existing priorities in a local context, but being able to fulfil national objectives. Are you okay to skip, Charlotte? So the local nature recovery strategy has these different steps in its production. It's composed of local habitat map and a statement of biodiversity priorities. These will create the local nature recovery strategy and will work closely together with each other. The first step of production of the LNRS is step 1, and this is to map areas of particular importance for biodiversity. And these include national conservation sites, local nature reserves, local wildlife sites, and irreplaceable habitats. The irreplaceable habitats are those that's identified by B&G guidelines. There is consultation later this year to further define those definitions of irreplaceable habitats. But currently it's veteran trees, salt marsh, Mediterranean, and I've forgotten the other one, ancient woodland, limestone pavement, and a few others. But yeah, so that's the initial stage of mapping. Luckily, we have a lot of that existing data within the local environmental records centre. So yeah, this stage is we have already gathered the data for this, which is great. Step 2 doesn't actually come in until the review of the strategy, which is in about 3 to 10 years' time after publication. And that's to identify areas where actions have taken place. So for this iteration of the LNRS, we'll be going straight to step 3, and that'll be describing the strategy area and its biodiversity, as well as opportunities for recovery. And this will then lead and help us identify and agree our LNRS priorities and potential measures. So these will then be used in step 5 to help map areas that could become of particular importance. And we're mapping these areas for nature recovery first, but as well as identifying areas where they're able to provide wider environmental benefits. And as I said, the local habitat map and the statement of biodiversity priorities need to link well with each other. So the descriptions and the approach that we take to mapping should reflect each other. So coming out of the Environment Act, where local nature recovery strategies came out of the Environment Act, sorry, as well as a number of things. I mean, there's national statutory targets that have been identified. There's the goal to, this is the goal to fulfill the Nature Recovery Network, which is a national ecological network. And like I say, local nature recovery strategies are used as a mechanism to help develop this national network, but on a local level. Protected sites strategies and species conservation strategies are further strategies that's come out of this, as the names read, in terms of protected sites and species. And hopefully in the future iterations of the LNRS, because as I understand, the protected sites strategies and species conservation strategies are still in development, but later on in the next iterations of, in the future iterations of this, we'll be able to bring these plans and strategies together in a more coherent way. As well, there's biodiversity net gain and a strengthened biodiversity duty on local authorities. So these two are in bold because they're identified as the main mechanisms of delivery for the LNRS. So as I said, there's these national environmental targets. The Environmental Improvement Plan identifies the 10 overarching targets that we're working to achieve on a national level. Local nature recovery strategies will help to fulfill some, or work towards helping to fulfill some of these goals, these overarching goals that we have. In particular, the ones that local nature recovery strategies should be contributing to are mitigating climate change, improving the water environment, and mitigating flood risk. So we had the regs and guidance released in April last year. The regulations set out what is legally required of the responsible authority and supporting authorities. What is legally required for the responsible authority to be able to produce the local nature recovery strategy, and the guidance helps guide the responsible authority in how to ensure they're meeting these legal requirements. So the regulations and guidance identified a few key things. So the regs says that we need to have a public consultation on the LNRS, rightly so, that it will need to be published and reviewed between every 3 to 10 years. And this is a cycle, so that will continue to do this for each iteration of the LNRS. So part of the guidance, the regulations and guidance, was to include, involve organisations, persons and organisations in the development of the local nature recovery strategy. So from a Greater Lincolnshire point of view, we thought when putting together our governance structure that we needed to hit these different sectors across Greater Lincolnshire. Like we want that, we want to involve other persons and organisations in this, and from a wide variety of sectors to really bring together existing plans and priorities. So we've identified 5 working groups, which are the Economic Benefit Working Group, the Community Benefit Working Group, environmental professionals, farmers and land managers, as well as the supporting authorities. And as well, we do have a species recovery group just set aside at the bottom there. They will feed into the LNRS, but will independently have their own remit outside of the LNRS as well. As well, we have the production LNRS production groups. This is the mapping and data task group, the actual LNRS production task group, and this is where we then go to management level and advisory. We thought that we needed to have a advisory group or steering group of some sort, so which some of you may have been invited to. So this is the overall governance structure, and these are the groups that we'd like to engage with whilst developing the LNRS. So our predicted timeline, as I said, the regs and guidance came out in April 2023. We've been doing project planning and design until August last year, and then from kind of end of August, September time to June of this year, we'd like to engage with those working groups to help contribute to the strategy. During this time, we'll also be doing the mapping activities until July of this year, and then hope have our final LNRS, well, our consultation draft LNRS, sorry, by August 24. We're aiming to go out to public consultation in October, November of this year, with the overall aim to get published by March 25. March 25 is a deadline set by DEFRA, so we're working towards meeting that deadline. And then from there, it's kind of delivery and monitoring of the progress of the LNRS, and then waiting for the opportunity to review, which will be called upon us by the Secretary of State. Oh, you're on mute, Charlotte.
Very slick. So I'll be carrying on from here. Thank you ever so much, Emily. Hopefully that has given everybody a little bit of a background of where the local nature recovery strategies have come from, and a little bit of detail of exactly what we need to do. I'm going to drill into that detail a little bit more, and talk to you more about your role as well. One thing to mention during that engagement phase that Emily was talking about is that we have had a public survey go out. So we have done some kind of wide scale engagement already. I think one of the things that really stands out for the LNRS in comparison to the biodiversity action plans is this really, really wide engagement, and it's something that us as a management board are very, very keen on. So we went forward with a public survey and got over 1,600 responses. So we're currently kind of ploughing through some of that data. Hopefully some of you managed to fill that in as well. It was, you know, it was for anybody in the county to be able to fill out. So the group that you are sat on at the moment, we call this Environmental Professionals Working Group. These are the organisations that we have invited. We've kind of been around the room and done some introductions. I know that in some cases there are a couple of people from organisations here. You're very welcome for more than one person to join any of these meetings if you would like to, or just nominate one person, have somebody as an alternate. It's completely up to you how you would like to do it. We want to be as efficient as we possibly can be with your time. For that reason, we've kind of you know, organise the meetings. We won't be putting any of those kind of things on you guys at all. So these are the organisations that we have invited. I think probably just to point out what we have done from the Environmental Professionals Group has not looked at the really small specialist organisations. They may have been invited to the Species Recovery Group to get their very specialist opinion, but what we're looking at is organisations that are looking at large areas of Greater Lincolnshire, or having a kind of overall overview of the county, and then using some of the specialist knowledge in different groups. This isn't set in stone here, so if you feel that your organisation is not appropriate to be on this group, I hope that you feel that we've invited you to the right group. If you feel you should be in a different group, all of these things, please highlight them to us, or if you feel that there is anybody else that should be sat around the table as well. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to let you know that we've got a series. We've got a little kind of Microsoft form that you can fill in, so that you can fill in some of these details, but we can discuss it afterwards as well. So what are we actually going to ask you to do? What will your role be? After this presentation, we will be sending out terms of reference for you, so you can really get an overview of what the ask is. As I said, we will try and be as efficient with your time as possible. We know people are getting pulled in all sorts of directions at the moment, but really we want you there to help shape the LNRS. Although we're having this kind of wide engagement and lots of different groups, it's very important that environmental professionals are very much involved in this so that we are making a plan, making a strategy that's ecologically possible and sits in line with what everybody else is doing. So we're really looking at those steps 3 to 4 that currently at the moment. So we're looking for you to be able to contribute to the description of the strategy area. So this kind of breaks down what we need to do in those steps. So we have to have a description of the strategy area, and we would like you involved in that part. Identifying priorities and their associated potential measures. So what habitat species are we going to prioritise, and what can we do to be able to improve those habitats or increase population sizes, ranges, etc., etc. We are going to end up with a very long list of habitats and potential measures, and we want you to be able to help us prioritise that as well. So as an example, Cornwall, who was one of the pilots, had a series of 9 criteria, including things like, is it a priority habitat, etc., etc. And they had a kind of scoring system to be able to really be able to get priorities. Because we have priorities for this iteration of the LNRS, it doesn't mean that other habitats, other species won't be prioritised in the future. This is something that there'll be multiple iterations of this, as Emily said. Also, the local habitat map, and we're looking at step 5 there. So step 1, which I'm going to show you in more detail in a second, is very prescriptive. Step 5 is where we have our local input and we decide what we want on that map, areas that are going to become could become of particular importance to biodiversity. Also, of course, we would like you to consult on the LNRS and look at what we have put together. So just to give you a timeline, as I said, we are going to send you terms of reference, so it's really clear that you it was really clear what you're going to be doing. Emily's raised her hand. Do you want to add something, Emily?
Yes, I just wanted to add there. I know we had with the mapping on the last slide that it was just the areas that could become of particular importance that we want you to contribute to. As I said, in future iterations, we will have that areas where actions have already taken place, and that is an important part of kind of feeding back any activities that you've done since the publication of the LNRS. So not kind of appropriate for now, but just a note that having that feedback and feeding into the LNRS that way will also be important.
Great, thank you. So yeah, timeline for kind of what we'd be looking at you helping us with. So initially we're looking at kind of extracting priorities from the plans and strategies that you already have from your organisations. But then, we would then have a very long list. We're going to be looking at setting criteria and prioritisation. And then once we've done that, once we know what our priorities are, what are the potential measures and where could we put those in place? So that's the general timeline of what we're going to be asking you to help us with. So we've already mentioned that step 1 is to map areas of particular importance for biodiversity, and Emily went into detail of what that would include. I'm happy to say that we've actually done step 1. This is very, very prescriptive. We've been in some meetings where different counties are trying to include different types of what is deemed as irreplaceable habitat within their county, etc., etc. But actually, this is one stage of the LNRS that is incredibly prescriptive, which I think is probably a really good thing, that every county is going to map exactly the same thing. It doesn't mean that we can't put areas that we think are really good for biodiversity or priorities for us. That will go in later, but the first stage, and we've already put this together. So this is some of the mapping work that Charlie has been working on, so at the Environmental Record Centre. So we have this first step already. We will get people to cast their eye over this just in case that we don't have the data on reserves and things. I'm sure that we do, but it's worth people casting their eye over this at some point during the process. So step 3 and step 4 are what we're looking at, as describing the strategy area, areas of opportunity for recovery, and then looking onto the priorities and potential measures. So breaking down that statement of biodiversity priorities and the description of the strategy area, we're going to be looking at the range and distribution of habitats. We're also very conscious of making sure that this fits with neighbouring counties as well. We border 7 different counties, and then we have the Humber and the Wash involved in our LNRS as well. And we need to make sure that this is kind of streamlined across borders as much as we possibly can. as I mentioned, really the only very prescriptive thing that we have had is that first mapping step. So we know every county will be mapping the same things. They won't be mapping it on the same platform and so it's not all going to look the same across the country. So we've got to be really conscious to work with our bordering counties and make sure that that these things fit across. So we've got everything on the screen there. I'm not going to go into details, but basically we'll be looking at description of the strategy area and its biodiversity. So we're going to start drafting that, and what we will ask is for your input. We'll also use any kind of plans, strategies, any descriptions that you have got as well. We can add some of that information in there. So things that we're going to be taking into account, said we've got Greater Lincolnshire. This is about the biggest LNRS in the country, so we have a huge area. It's really positive that we've done that. I'm very glad that Lincolnshire hasn't been split up. We're looking at Greater Lincolnshire. So we're looking at the Humber and the Wash, including that. We've got the 10 local authority areas, and we really need to take into account the land use in Lincolnshire as well, the fact that we are highly agricultural. So all of these things will be taken into account when we're describing the strategy area. We are going to base our descriptions on national character areas. Now we're open to kind of debate on this in terms of, do we split this down further when we start looking at our description? But from speaking to our neighbouring counties, this is how they are approaching it as well. So we feel like that is the best way to do it, to make sure that we are staying in line with what they're doing, and meaning that we aren't going to be suggesting things that are significantly different to just over the border. So that is the kind of approach that we are looking at. As I said, we're open to, if anybody's got any thoughts on that, and please let us know. We'll be opening up for discussion at the end, and definitely looking at potentially being able to split this down further. I think Darren put his hand up. Darren, did you want to say something now, or do you want to ask a question later? Or you can.
It was just about that description of areas, and I can come back to it later, Charlotte.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Also, of course, thinking about our climate, things that are unique about our climate, the fact that we're generally dry, warm here in comparison to the rest of the country. I say dry after the last couple of months, maybe not so much, but we will be taking that into account as well. And of course, the challenges. So part of this description is that we're looking at describing the strategy area, and then we need to describe what our challenges and opportunities are. There are lots of challenges, you know, but we absolutely can't get away from the agricultural challenges we have here. But the fact that we have to make this balance, that food production is incredibly important in Greater Lincolnshire, but we need to balance this with looking at our nature recovery strategy at the same time. This is a biodiversity first strategy, but of course we're going to be taking into account the land use across the county. Then the opportunity. So we really want to look at what everybody is already doing on the ground and what plans you already have in place. Really, this is the sort of, we stole this from the Wildlife Trust, but we always thought it was quite a nice kind of vision of a functioning ecological network where we are thinking about climate resilience, we are thinking about improving biodiversity, but we also still have green space around where people are living. We're looking at flood mitigation. We're looking at all of these things kind of internet connected and working together, and also still producing food at the same time across the county. So when we're looking at the challenges and looking at the opportunities, we want to look at what all of your organisations have already got planned. Okay, so first thing, essentially, we are going to ask you to do, as I said, we will be sending through our terms of reference so you can understand what we're kind of looking at as an overview for this group. But one of the first things we want to do is ask you for your relevant existing plans and strategies so that we can bring these into the local nature recovery strategy straight from the beginning. So these are just some examples. There will be loads more out there, but any biodiversity action plans, nature strategies, tree planting strategies, anything that you have, please send it to us. And that's going to be our first task, basically, so that we can extract that and input this into the LNRS to make sure that we're all going in the same line. We can't promise that every single priority or plan that you have will fit exactly in line with the LNRS, but we're going to bring this in as much as we possibly can. We do understand that all organisations are going to have their own priorities, and there will be work that you will all be doing, but what we want to do is try and make sure that we're all working in the same direction. So we will do our best to incorporate as much as we possibly can. So that is exactly what we're asking. So what we're going to follow up with is a Microsoft form to try to make this as simple as possible and easy for us to collate all the data as well. It's just a series of a few questions. So who do you represent? What relevant existing plans and strategies are you aware of? So take a bit of time to look around your organisation and bring these together. If you are able to do any kind of cutting down of any of this for us or highlight certain areas that you think are really important, that's massively helpful. You can imagine we're going to be kind of sifting through a lot of this. We're going to be asking this from each of those working groups that we've spoken from. I imagine we're probably going to get the most back from this group, but we are going to be asking from it across all of those working groups. Please let us know, and we can talk about this at the end as well, if there are other people from your organisation or any other organisations that you think should contribute to this group or other groups. That's fine. Just let us know what you think. We want to make sure that we've got the right people right from the start. And also, if you feel that you need any training within your organisation, if you'd benefit from a one-on-one call to go through any of this, please let us know. We want to support all of you in this process as well. So we have that Microsoft form that will be emailed around to you with full instructions. We're also going to send out all the appointments for all of the further meetings over the next kind of 6 months so that you've got those in your diary. And if you're not able to attend, then maybe you could make sure that there is somebody to represent your organisation coming along. So hopefully that should be fairly simple. But as I said, if you want to have a kind of follow-up call with one of us, want to talk about this in any more detail, then please do let us know. And we're going to open up for questions in a moment as well. Just as a note, we do have a website